There was a book written once that said you learn all you need to know to be successful in this world in the sandbox as a kid. Along those lines, here's some profound words of wisdom from that great man, Dr. Seuss. You have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself any direction you choose. With that said, this is David Bennett and Financiers Mortgage with your weekly update. Okay folks, it ain't rocket science. I will give you this, that it is more difficult than it used to be, and it's a whole lot more difficult than it needs to be. Let me give you some examples of some loans that we got in the past couple of weeks that have been turned down by other lenders that we've either already gotten approved or else will have approved shortly. Now, some of these turn downs were due to people not knowing the guidelines very well. The guidelines say you can go from here to here. Can't go past this guideline unless you've got these three things. Most lenders don't even know these three things exist. But all too often, it's just plain old common sense. As Foghorn Leghorn would say, use your noggin, boy, I say, use your noggin. One customer we received this last week had debt ratios that were too high, but they had $90,000 sitting in the bank. They'd been to multiple lenders and not a one had suggested they pay some debts down or put slightly more than minimum down payment on the loan. Now, paying the debts down obviously lowers the ratios, but did you know that if you put more than minimum down, it allows the underwriter to extend the ratios? And we're talking a lot here. Let's say on an FHA loan, you put 4% down or 4.5% down. Now, if you put the two together, you get much more than either individually. Now, another problem we see over and over again is that lenders and the credit repair agencies tell people to pay off their collections. And that's the absolute worst thing they could do. It reaffirms the debt. So now the collection agency can re-report it as a brand new paid collection that happened as of the day they paid it off. That will devastate their credit scores. If a recent 30-day late can cause their credit score to drop 50 to 80 points, just think of what a collection will do. And that, in a nutshell, is the problem with the new FHA policy that goes into effect in April. They'll be requiring people to pay off any collections that either individually or collectively exceed $1,000. And that's going to make their credit scores drop to below acceptable levels. So the buyers will be damned if they do, damned if they don't. Something's have to be worked out, and I have faith that it will be, but I am also dreading the workout period. Now, many of these turn downs we're getting, we end up having to treat the disease rather than the symptom. As I've said so many times before, a trained monkey can gather the data needed for a loan. The real skill comes in presenting this data in such a way that an underwriter wants to approve this loan. Now, back to treating the disease. Very seldom do we find that the stated reason for a turn down is the real reason. And by treating the disease, I mean we try to correct whatever it is that's causing the restrictive requirement in the first place. So another lender might say that they're not approved because their ratios are too high. But when we research the file, we find out that the ratios have been restricted because there's a recent collection. Now, what if we can research this collection and find out that it's an older collection, and therefore not a new one at all, and or maybe find that it's from a previous life, like a divorce. Then we can go back to regular ratios and get them approved. That's another real life example of something that's happened in the last couple of weeks. Now, another couple we got had a bankruptcy, a foreclosure, and lates after that. So of course you're sitting there saying there is no way they're going to get a loan. But now we're back to those ifs. If this and this happen, you can get those loans. The problem here was the letter that the other lenders, yes, plural, lenders, had been using, tied all of these together and made it one event. So of course they weren't getting approved. Now, presentation is critical. In this case, the husband had a bankruptcy due to divorce years ago. The wife had a foreclosure before she met him. And then 5 years after his bankruptcy, he lost his job and had a string of lates. Now, individually, each of these items is overcomable, but put them together and they're not getting a loan. This one didn't have such a happy ending. We had them approvable, and then he got injured and had to go on disability. But we will be able to get them approved once a short while after he goes back to his job and we can prove an income up. In other words, little things make a difference. Now, qualifying is based on the total payment, correct? So any way we can find to reduce a monthly payment makes it easier for someone to qualify, or maybe allows them to qualify for a little more. One of the things we've done for decades is we keep an insurance database. We keep track of insurance agents and insurance companies who have good prices and have good service. Then when a buyer comes in and has their insurance quote, we'll shop it for them. And we found that in most people we can save them $300 to $500 a year in insurance. We've saved some people over $1,000. If all we save them is $300 a year, that drops their payment by $25. If we save them $500, that drops their payment to $42. Just makes it easier to qualify. But even doing all this stuff, we don't really feel like we're doing anything special. We think we're just doing our job. But if that's true, that means the other guys aren't doing their jobs, because last year, just over 50% of all the loans we closed have been turned down by one or more lenders. Obviously, that's people that shouldn't have been turned down in the first place. We feel if we accept a loan, we have a commitment to do everything in our power to make that loan. And that shows in our approval rate, which in 2011 was 10 times the national norm. We go to extremes. We give the underwriters a roadmap to the file. We include pictures and stories of the people. People is a key word there. We want the underwriter to see this as a person, not as a stack of papers they've got to get through before they can go home for the day. Presentation is everything. But even with this roadmap and everything else, sometimes the underwriters come back with the strangest approval conditions. But the key word there is approval. At that time, it's our job to fight for realistic conditions and minimal conditions. We constantly get most, if not all, of these conditions waived. This is the part of the job we like the least. It's usually late in the process, and we don't always get a real clear answer as to why they want that condition or what prompted it. But this back and forth phone conversations that we'll have can cause baldness and ulcers and blindness, but we prevail more times than not. Now, Dr. Seuss says to use your head and your feet to steer yourself in the right direction. Well, obviously, the right direction is financier's mortgage. Are you thrilled and overjoyed at all the new FHA guidelines going into effect in April? Yeah, I didn't think so. I'm not either. But did you know you can protest those things? You can send an email to answers@hud.gov. Don't worry, I've got it on the webpage. Let me read you the email that I sent them. We've been hearing about the possibilities that collections would one day need to be paid off prior to closing, but it's always been paired with some promised legislation that would require creditors to delete the paid account from the credit bureau at the same time. Without this deletion, credit scores would drop 80 to 100 points and would now preclude people from buying due to low credit scores. Very recently, there was legislation being devised that would require medical collections to be removed 45 days after paying off of the debt, but that's disappeared as well. Now we find that your new FHA collection policy doesn't exclude medical collections. Medical collections aren't an indication of the willingness of a borrower to pay their debts. No, it's more an indication of how insurance companies pay their debts or poor billing policies by hospitals and doctors. You need to rethink your new collection policy, because while there are deadbeats out there, there are also many more unethical collection agencies that purposefully duplicate and inflate collection amounts so that sane people refuse to pay them. The collection industry is rife with unethical and immoral individuals who prey upon consumers. You are unnecessarily lining these guys' pockets and rewarding illegal actions while punishing consumers everywhere. Now, if you're going to send an email, just remember your email should talk about the harm it does to the consumer, not the harm it's doing to your pocketbook. That Dr. Seuss was one smart cookie, wasn't he? Well, I trust you taking his words to heart. It's going to lead yourself in the direction to the fewest turn downs and the most closings. Now remember, you can also get daily market updates by going to facebook.com/loan.update. That's facebook.com/loan.update. You can learn a lot by going to our out-of-date but still totally relevant webpage at financiersmortgage.com. That's financiers with an S, not with a $sign. Until next time, Debbie and I wish you the best of luck, and remember, you can call us night or day, weekday or weekend. We answer the phones way after. Uh-oh, gotta go. See you next time.